I think Karandikar was getting good.
உடனே அடுத்து ஆரம்பிச்சுட்டா.
Let's see. Okay. So maybe the last class was ending late. Moving in fast. Okay. So, yeah, let's start. People are coming in fast. Most are there already. So, very briefly, last time I started discussing or describing rather, not really discussing, open sets and closed sets in real numbers. So this is a closed set, and I had discussed at length the meaning of this brackets, the moving the square bracket and the usual bracket. This one is sometimes called the usual bracket. So one thing I did not mention, that when we also allow one of these entities to be infinity. So the 0 to infinity closed at 0, this is called also closed set. Because we are only discussing subsets of R, and infinity is not in R. So we cannot really say 0 to infinity including infinity. Unless we extend the real number system to include infinities, we cannot say this. So this is closed and this is open. Okay. So it is not that the open or closed intervals have to be only finite. So these are, when A and B both are in R, both these are bounded intervals. A to B, open at closed at both. This is open at both. These are bounded intervals. The open or closed intervals can be unbounded. The entire thing can also be minus infinity to infinity. It is both open and closed. That is the convention.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is infinity? Is it a number or like some notation?
It is a notation. There is no number infinity. Okay. It's larger than every number in real numbers. That's it. Okay. So we have already started saying limit as n goes to infinity. So by that we mean if n exceeds, for large enough n, it exceeds any given one number, then we say it is converging to infinity. It is going to infinity. Okay.
But no matter how long we go, we can always find a number on real line. Like,
yeah, but see, you have to understand the mathematical notation clearly. So if we say that you should understand what we mean by saying that limit of some object is okay. Limit n going to infinity 1 over n is 0. What does this mean? One way to say is no, we don't say that a notation is bigger than a number. This was a question by Satyan Jha. We don't say this infinity is a notation which is bigger than every number. No, we just add a notation and we give a meaning to what do we mean by limit n going to infinity. Okay. So this we have seen earlier, right? So if you have a question with this, ask me. Otherwise, this is a notation for all x belonging to R such that 0 is less than equal to x. That's it. We don't put any upper limit. So all things above 0 are, and then we introduce this as a notation. So this is a notation. This is also a notation. And we can talk about minus infinity to 1 as a notation. Okay. So I hope it is clear. So just like what do we mean by this sign? Right? It's a meaning we have given.
When we say something is infinity, do we mean that there is something that we don't want to talk about that, or we don't know about the structure of that thing?
No, wait. We are only saying something converges to, as n goes to infinity. We are not saying something is equal to infinity.
Like, what is it? Is it a group of numbers or a single number, or is it just a notation? Like,
It is not a number, and it's a concept to which we are giving this notation. Okay. It is not a number. Our numbers are only real numbers. Okay. And we are giving a meaning to this notation. N tends to infinity, 0 to infinity, minus infinity to 1. Okay. So we are adding minus infinity as a number, as a notation for something which is less than every real number, and infinity as a notation for something which is above everything in real numbers.
how can, like, when it's n tends to infinity, then we are saying that we are eventually going like n 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll surely be like going on the number. We will always be in the set of natural numbers. We can't go beyond now. We are like we
We
will
are
always
very
be.
close to that. You see, we are unnecessarily debating on this issue. We are just giving a meaning that n keeps increasing. That's it. Okay.
No, so when we say that it is like beyond all numbers, what does that mean? Like,
What does
beyond,
that mean?
yeah.
That is the meaning we give. Okay. We don't have to call it a number. What is that object? That object has a meaning. The meaning is at the moment only, we are not even saying infinity plus infinity. At the moment, all we are saying is n tends to infinity, 0 to infinity, minus infinity to 1. What is the problem with this notation? If you're still not convinced, let us fix a time separately in the evening someday. And those who want to join can come there, but we can't spend time talking about what is infinity in this thing here. Okay. It is just a concept. You can keep arguing what is 0 factorial. What does it mean? Right? What does it mean, 0 factorial or a power 0? What does it mean? Right? It's a notation, convention. So it is the same thing here. If you're not convinced, write to me and or others who want to, we can have a separately 1 hour discussion on this. Okay. Now, likewise, open sets and closed sets. These are just what I wrote down are some examples of what is an open set or what is a closed set. In mathematical literature, the collection of open sets and closed sets is much larger. And you are going to learn that in a course somewhere, okay, maybe this year, second semester, or next year, first semester. But at the moment, we do not want to spend time on that. What do you mean by open and closed? I have tried to give you a concept of what is open, what is closed in the sense of a convergence of sequence of numbers. Or else you can take that as just a meaning or no name for this intervals that I have called open and closed. Okay. Now, for those who are interested, you will anyway be doing it in a course, but this whole thing comes under what a chapter or as a subject called topology, and there is a huge meaning to that. And those who want, there is I can share with you the name of the author whose book I have learned from, and I still find it's a great book, called Dugunji. It seems to be available on the internet to download, so PDF. But I'm not suggesting that you jump and go ahead to see Dugunji's book on topology. You are anyway be going to learning it. Right now, we are only going to be talking about this closed and open intervals. And main object we want to talk about is functions from so you have a subset of real numbers, and you want to talk about a function from that set E to R. And typically we will be taking, for examples, E will be a closed interval or open interval, closed bounded interval or open bounded interval, one of these. Okay. But we want to quickly move to this and without spending time on what exactly this notation is meaning. Okay. So, firstly, I suppose you all are familiar with what this notation means. So E is a subset, and for every x in E, what we have is what is fx. Fx will be a number belonging to R. And if we take f to be set of all fx x belonging to E, it is called the range. And this E is called the domain. Okay. So this is basic set theory, what is set, what is function, and etc. etc. But since continuous function is a major subject for or major object in our discussion, let me just put it up again. So E is the domain. The set of all values that f reaches to is called the range. And we are only talking from functions from real subset of real numbers to real numbers. It can be expanded in many different ways. In the next semester itself, you will see when you go from subsets of real numbers to subset of the plane, subset of higher order, etc., etc. But first thing is to simplest thing, we should understand it completely. Okay, and examples. note that I cannot put this is an incomplete definition because F0 is not defined. So my F is not defined on this set E that I have given here in red color. If at all I have to define a function this, then I can say this is this. And at 0, we have to give it some alternate definition. Let's say. So this is also to learn that a function doesn't have to be defined only from a formula. It can be different objects. For some sets, it is, for some values, it is something, something else, it is something else. So this is, now it is valid. But if I don't add what is its value at x equal to 0, no, because 1 by x is not defined for x equal to 0. Okay. So very important that the function values for every element in the domain have to be defined. Okay. That is what is a function. And our we want to differentiate between these two objects. Let's say where this with square brackets we sometimes mean integer part. Okay. Or notation floor of x or whatever you call integer part of x, whatever. Okay. So you understand what this means. What is f of g of 3.5, f of 3. F of 3.5, we know it is 3.5 times 3.5. But what is g of 3.5? G of 3.5, integer part of 3.5 is 3, and g of f will be equal to 3 times 3, so 9. Okay. So you can define any number of functions, but there is a difference between these two functions. Okay. So if you try to draw on a plane a graph, then this one will have something of this kind. My drawing is very poor, but whereas for G, it will have something like this. Between from 0 up to but not including 1, it will be 0. Then it will be 1 times 1 will be 1. Then 2 times 2 will be 4, and so on and so forth. So you can plot these things and you see a fundamental difference between the two. Okay. And the simplest way to describe that difference is that the first one, the red one, namely for f, when I try to draw the graph, I don't have to lift my finger or pen. I can draw it at one go. Whereas if I try to draw the blue one, I need to lift my finger or lift the pen that I am drawing it with and then write down. Okay. So this is called continuous. And this is not continuous. We have to mathematically define it, but I have tried to describe for you what is the intention. Okay. And you can think about examples of continuous functions and not continuous functions and so on and so forth. So let's see. In this, you can try to think about it and you can be convinced that the blue colored ones are both continuous functions. You can draw them without having to lift your finger. Of course, it will be very difficult to draw fx equal to 1 by x, because as x is going to 0, your numbers have to be very large. So, but technically, yes, you can draw the graph in a suitable way, you scale it in a suitable way that it can be making sense. But this red one, while it is defined, at 0, you have to put it somewhere else. And for other ones, 1 by x, you have to go some way up somewhere. So these at 0 and close to 0, these two are not related. Okay. So this is the part we want to capture. Okay. The meaning. Likewise here, the first one we can keep drawing without lifting. The second one we need to lift. So here is the definition. My intention is that if x is close to y, then fx is close to fy. Now we have to give meaning to what is close. And as I explained, for sequences, it should be in the same way that if I am claiming close, then I have to leave you the choice of what you will consider close, etc. etc. So formally, let me write down. First, let me write down formally, then we will talk. For all x belonging to E, for all epsilon positive, there exists delta positive such that f is said to be continuous if this condition holds. For if you give me what is x and you tell me what you consider close epsilon, what will you consider that fx is close to fy? How close you need y needs to be for x for you to be convinced that fx is close to fy. So okay, you prescribe what is close for fx, and then I will pick what I consider is close to x close to y. What is the meaning? Okay, these two are not the same notion of closeness. Okay, so we are not saying that for all x, for all epsilon, x I missed writing this. So for all x, for all epsilon, there exists a delta such that whenever y is within delta of x, fx and fy, the distance is at most sorry. Only when I read, I understand that what I have written is wrong. So for every epsilon, for every x, for every epsilon, there is a delta such that whenever x and y are differ by less than delta, fx and fy differ by less than epsilon.
So this is f is continuous at y, right?
Well, no, x. So wait, since I have said for all x and for all epsilon, this is a statement about continuity in the interval. If I had put only this and said given x fixed, if x were fixed and then we say this for all y like this, then it is continuity at x. But the way I have defined it, it is continuity on the interval.
But you haven't given f for all y. That's why.
No, it is not for all y. So such that, okay, here I should include such that y in E, x minus y less than delta implies this. So let me put it carefully here. Okay. So if we fix a x, then f is said to be continuous at x if for all epsilon positive, there exists a delta positive such that y in E, x minus y less than delta implies fx minus fy less than epsilon. And then if you have separately defined continuity at a point, this is continuity at x. And then we can say f is continuous on E, on the domain, if it is continuous at x for all x in E. Okay. So we can separately define continuity at a point and then say what is mean by continuity at the entire domain. And in the previous thing, I had written down a definition which is like continuity on the entire domain. In both the cases, even in the, okay, so here, firstly, since we are defining for every x and then saying this, we are allowing that this delta can depend on x. And the way we interpret mathematical notation, the same is the case here. Because I say for every x, for every epsilon. So this delta is chosen after we have chosen both x and epsilon. So delta can depend on both x and epsilon. Whereas here we are doing it only after x is anyway fixed. So this delta can depend on x, and of course it can always depend on epsilon because that is epsilon has been first chosen.
Sir, could you once repeat the role of y? I mean, I am not being able to understand the y in the above definition.
Okay. Let's focus here. So whenever you take any point y in the domain of the interval, which is within whose distance from x is less than delta, then fx minus fy is less than epsilon.
Okay, sir, I understand.
So if our function is defined on closed interval, just to elaborate, okay, if E is defined on 0, 1, and we are talking of continuity at 0, then we don't go below 0. You cannot say that if my delta is 1 by 10, then you can't go to think below 0 because our f is not even defined. Okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah. Right.
So like if the domain is union of two intervals which are disjoint, then how do we like define continuity there, or do we define it?
No, definition is the same. So, okay, good question. So let's say my E is 0 to 1 and 2 to 4. Okay, this is my domain. Okay. Now, if I define my function f to be fx equal to 0 if x is in closed interval 0, 1. And it is equal to 1 if x belongs to 2. Okay, this is a valid function. And as per what we have defined, this is continuous function. You give me any epsilon, whatever you want, I'll take delta to be less than 1. I'll take delta to be half. So whenever two numbers differ by less than half, they are either both in 0, 1 or both in 2, 4. So that's it. Okay.
So I mean, like, do we, in this case, when we are talking of continuity at 1, like above 1, do we jump to 2, or like we leave?
No.
Only talk about.
No. So right now we are only talking about these being subsets of real number, and the notion of distance is as in real number. Okay. Then you don't jump across 1 to 2. No.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
That was my main doubt.
No, we don't. So we are only sticking to our natural notion of what do we mean by distance between 2 points. As there, both points are all real numbers, so the distance is just as in real numbers. Okay. Absolute value of y minus x. You can change the notion of distance and then you can define various things. Okay. So the purpose of doing this first for real numbers is that you are not doing very funny definitions. These are all very natural things. Okay. Now, if you take E to be okay, you can see that in this case, concretely, you are given an epsilon, your delta choice will depend on what is the x you are trying to do the proof. Likewise, in both these examples, if you want to show that they are continuous, which I leave as exercise for you, okay, you can write down what should be the delta. Given an epsilon, what should be the choice of delta. Okay. And it's convenient to use epsilon delta because all books, everybody just uses epsilon delta, but there is nothing sacrosanct about it. I could have said alpha, beta, or I could have been sadistic and I would have changed the roles of epsilon and delta, and that would have confused you all. You read any book, you will be completely confused. I don't want to do that. Okay. So,
Sir?
yeah.
So when we say continuity at a point x, first we define the closeness of y with respect to x.
Sorry. First we define
closeness of y, the other point with respect to x. That means first we define delta, then there exists epsilon.
Wait. See, we are only talking about functions of real numbers, and I am not defining distance between 2 points separately. It is as in the real number system. Okay.
So, what I'm saying is, like first we talk about delta, then we say there exists epsilon. But like you wrote, there exists.
Can you? I cannot hear you properly.
So first we need to define the closeness of x and y. Like first
we don't need to define. These are both real numbers, and on real numbers, distance between 2 points is defined and agreed upon. Y minus x absolute value.
Not defined, like choose delta. First, we need to choose delta, then there exists epsilon.
So that is what I'm saying.
But you said that there exists delta for epsilon.
Yeah.
But so we need the closeness of y and x. Then we define then we choose the closeness of fy and fx.
See, I think you are completely confused about the various terminology and notations. The definition is, you give me what is epsilon, I will choose what is the delta. And that delta will be such that whenever x and y differ by less than delta, fx and fy will differ by less than epsilon. Where is the problem in this statement?
Like first someone said to us that like x differ from y by delta. Then we say that we can find some epsilon such that
no. You are not allowed to choose an epsilon. Epsilon is chosen. You are proving something, then the other person chooses epsilon, and you are allowed to choose a delta. Yes, first we have epsilon. According to that, we choose delta. And it is implied here that we are talking about continuity at only one fixed x in this page here just now. So x is anyway fixed. So given an epsilon, we are choosing a delta. And we are choosing it so that the later condition holds. And in the examples I have given,
hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I mean, if we say we get a delta for which the inequality holds, I mean, mod fx minus fy is less than epsilon holds for a given epsilon, then if within that delta neighborhood of x, we do not get any such y in our domain, I mean, y also has to be in E, right?
Yes.
Then will it be vacuously true? I mean,
yeah. Yes. Okay. That is what is in this function effect. The first one here is vacuously continuous because on each interval separately it is defined to be constant, and then these two are well separated, so it is vacuously continuous function. Yes.
Okay, sir.
All right. No, to clear your doubts, what you should do is in both these examples that are below here just now in both these examples, you fix some epsilon and given an epsilon, so you can put delta as you can write down delta as a function of epsilon. So you will know that as soon as you fix epsilon, you can write down what is delta, or take epsilon to be 0.1, 0.01, 0.001, and for each of these three cases, pull out what is delta, for which the condition will hold. Okay.
Okay, sir.
And so I've just cooked up one example. All right. E is 0 to 100. Fx is x minus 10 square. X is in E. Here, if you give an epsilon and you now try to find a delta, okay, you will, for which fx, for which fy minus fx less than x minus y less than delta will give you fx minus fy less than epsilon, you will see that here this delta can be chosen such a way in other words, delta depends only on epsilon. The same choice of delta will work with all x's. Okay. Then this is called uniformly continuous. I will put it this definition later and put conditions under which we can do uniform continuity, etc. later. But I'm just trying to alert that there is a difference, that in both these examples, once you fix even if whatever epsilon you are given, in order to come out with a verdict as to what the delta should be, in both these examples, your choice of delta will depend on what x we are talking about. Whereas in the second example here, this example, you can come up with a choice of delta which will work for every x. And the reason is very simple, because you just start doing a calculation. X minus 10 square minus y minus 10 square absolute value, a square minus b square. So this is equal to absolute value x minus y times this plus this a minus. So now what is the largest possible value on this side? You can even ignore it, is minus 20. So 100 plus 100, 200. So delta equal to epsilon by 200 will work. You can be more precise and say delta equal to epsilon by 180 will also work. Fine. Do you see what I am getting? In writing a proof that some function is continuous, you are not required to give the best possible value of delta. It's not that if somebody gives epsilon to be delta to be epsilon by 200 and somebody else is more precise and gives epsilon to be epsilon by 180, that the other person who gave the more precise answer will get more marks. No. All you have to show is that you have to produce, you can say delta to be epsilon by 5000. Fine, no harm done.
Sir?
Yeah?
So could you move up? I can't see the bottom.
Oh, sorry.
Can you see? Yeah.
Yeah, so the choice is never, I mean, the important point is, if you are given a question that, show that this is a continuous function. So, and you are saying, I'm giving epsilon to be 0.001. You are not required to do a calculation and get the best possible delta that you can get. Okay. Any delta which will work is enough. Okay. But if you, I mean, how do you start doing a question? So for example, let's do, if you wanted to do this fx equal to 1 by x, you are given a x and epsilon and so on and so forth. So your fx minus fy will be f1 by x minus 1 by y. And that will be equal to y minus x divided by xy absolute value. You are given numerator is less than epsilon. Now the denominator, once x is positive and y is within, so you will have to work hard to show that how will you get delta given an epsilon. And it will depend on what the x is. Okay. So this is something, for this example, you are given epsilon to be 0.01. Now produce a delta for every x. That is a good exercise. And if you have difficulty, we'll take it up next class. But you must spend time on this, that how will you be able to choose a delta given an epsilon?
So, but in the above function, I mean, fx equal to 1 by x, if
Huh.
the domain was bounded below by some non-zero thing, then it
If
would have
yes,
been easier.
yeah. But remember, when I say a function, function always includes its domain. Once I change the domain, I am changing the function.
Yes, sir. I was just taking out that.
Right, right. If you give that the domain to be some number above 1 and closed at that and upper end and so on and so forth, then everything is fine. Then it will not depend on x. Yeah.
Sir, is it incorrect to choose delta in terms of x and y?
Delta in terms of x and y, yes.
Means, is it correct or?
No, because it has some, you have to choose a delta which will work for all y. You cannot choose it in terms of y. You are fixed the x, you are proving continuity at x. You can choose your delta to be depending on epsilon as well as x. So some books, to carefully point this out, would even write it here. There exists a delta equal to delta epsilon x. Okay. In some books, you can find this, so that it is clear that your choice of delta can depend on epsilon and x, but it is never allowed to depend on y. Because then if you make it choose depending on y, then which one will go first?
Okay.
Yeah. So I have to find new page now. Okay. All right. So we have defined what do we mean by a continuous function from set E to real numbers. And so in some ways, this epsilon delta thing that we did is similar in principle to epsilon n naught thing that we did for a convergence of a sequence. For all epsilon, in that case, it is there exists n naught such that n bigger than equal to n naught. Here, for all epsilon, there is the delta. Okay. So we can also rewrite that in this way: continuity at the same statement, I have written it slightly differently. So x minus y less absolute value less than epsilon, I have replaced it by y belonging to x minus epsilon to x plus epsilon. But it also needs to be part of our domain. So therefore, that intersection E, it implies fy minus fx less than epsilon.
So shouldn't it be x minus delta, comma y, x plus delta?
Yes. Yes. So good that you are alert. So all these are meaning the same thing. Okay. This definition is same as what I had written earlier. Okay.
Sir, what if E is a closed interval and x is the endpoint?
Fine. What is the problem? Then what we have, x minus delta x plus delta intersection E.
Oh, okay, okay. I got it.
This will be only 1 minus delta to
Yeah.
1.
Yes.
Right? So no problem whatsoever. So continuity is an extremely important notion. Okay. And you must try to digest what I have said now and the examples that we are discussing. Okay. So here are some very simple things which you can write down a proof. I will not write down unless you want me to. So suppose E is some subset of R and FG So when we say f and g are continuous functions, that means they are continuous at every point in E. Okay. It's convenient to also keep this notion. If f and g are continuous functions, then if you multiply by a constant,
Sir, you have written f is from E to R, right?
yeah. And constants means real constants. All of these are continuous functions. So the assertion is that you have, once you have continuous function, you can multiply by a constant, you can add a constant, you can take the linear combination of two continuous functions, or you multiply the two continuous functions, and now we can keep going on and on, right? All are continuous functions. Proof will be very simple. It will be like proving that if you have two sequences which converge, then their sum also is a new sequence which converges. Product is also a new sequence which converges, and so on and so forth. Okay. In principle, this proof is no different from that proof. So if any of you think that one of these statements needs to be discussed or shown what exactly needs to be done, I can spend some time on that, but it is. So let us take f times g. So we are given that f and g are continuous, and we want to show that f times g, h4 is also continuous. So fix x. Okay. Now, what is it that, so always this epsilon, etc., either in the rough pages or depends on how you write, we should first look at h4x minus h4y. What will that be equal to? That will be equal to fx gx minus and this can be thought of as less than equal to mod fx times I made it. So we add and subtract. In order to proceed, I will add and subtract fx gy. Okay. So what will be the first term? First term will be fx will be common. So what I had written fx times absolute value gx minus gy plus the second term, it is going to be absolute value gy times now. We know that both these quantities we can bound them by small numbers. Given epsilon, we can choose a delta so that this will be less than epsilon, this will be less than epsilon. Well, okay, given an x, you know the value of fx also. What about this gy? What do you do? Well, here what you do is absolute value gy, here you replace it by absolute value of gx plus absolute value of gx minus gy. So, if you want that this quantity should be less than epsilon, okay, then you can first choose such that each of these terms is less than epsilon by 2. So, we want that this is to be less than epsilon by 2. So, gx minus gy should be less than epsilon by 2 times mod fx. Okay, you can say here that if fx is 0 for a fixed x, okay. If fx is 0, this term is already 0. You need not proceed. You need not worry. You only need to worry about the second term. But if you don't want to separately do if fx equal to 0, what to do? You can say here this max 1, something like that. Okay. You have to ensure always that you are not dividing by 0. How you do it is up to you. You can separately do the case fx is 0 and then write down if 0 is in E and fx is 0. Otherwise, the simple thing will be to do this. You don't have to write a separate argument for that. So now you know that for G, you should choose epsilon. If you want to make this whole thing less than epsilon, you choose this quantity, you call this epsilon dash, and make delta 1 for G to be such that corresponding to this epsilon dash. For F, what will you do? Well, you have already, you know what is Gx. You know that Gx minus Gy you can make less than this epsilon dash by this formula. So now you choose a suitable F and complete the argument. Okay, so in general, for this h, the thing may depend on what are the values of fx and fy and fx, gy, and so on. But so somebody had earlier asked, can we choose our delta to also depend on y? So indirectly, yes, but as long as you put that dependence as a dependence on g of x and distance between gx and gy, then no problem. Did you find this part confusing, or you want me to write it out again, or what do you? I want some feedback. If I was in a classroom, I would, looking at your faces, I will figure out how many are confused and how many have understood. So for now, I am taking that you have understood, but I will leave it with this part with a thing that you take e to be 1 to 10. And I'm now going to list some values of x. So for these 5 values of x and epsilon to be 0.01, get hold of delta. So how many deltas you will need to get? 5 of them, because epsilon is, I am giving only one value of epsilon and I am giving you 5 values of x. So you will be able to show, you should be able to compute 5 values of delta corresponding to each value of x. Each one there will be one value of delta, for which fx gx minus fy gy will work. Okay. Now, here is a very interesting idea or interesting concept that we are going to show, that so one should be very clear that, if and only if what. So this whole thing is one condition. That is, if you have a sequence in E, which is converging to a point in E, then fxn also is converges to fx. That is the whole condition. And so you have a function f from E to R. That function is continuous if and only if whenever you have a sequence in E converging to X, then fxn converges to Fx. And if one proves this, then proving this for sequences or proving this for continuous functions is equivalent. If you have proven it for continuous sequences, you can utilize that and this new characterization that I have given just now to say that these are also continuous. These H's are also continuous. Or if you prove this, then you can go there and say that, okay, sum of two convergent sequences is also convergent. Product of two convergent sequences is also also convergent, and so on and so forth. Okay. And now this I am going to first explain and then write out a proof, because that is also important. Statement should be understood by everybody. Okay, so we have to basically to prove two ways. If f is continuous, we want to prove this, and if this is happening, then we want to show that f is continuous.
So this xn belongs to E refers to the fact that all the sequences with their terms in E, right?
Yeah.
I mean, any
all
sequence.
the sequences with terms in E and the limit
and
in
converging to X.
And converging to X, which is also in E.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Because only then this fxn we can talk about. If any of xn's are not in E or X is not in E, we cannot talk about the conclusion.
Okay.
So suppose f is given to be continuous. And you are given that xn's are in E for all n and x is in E. You want to show that yn equal to, or whatever, un to show un converges to E. That will prove the first half. This continuous implies this. So, if and only if meaning is that this implies this, first statement implies second, and second statement implies first. Now, all right, we are given some condition. Now we want to show that a sequence is converging to a point. What is our thing? Okay, given an epsilon, we want to show n naught such that that is what we have to show. But un minus u is nothing but fxn minus fx. So this xn is just some y. Okay. So that will tell us how to get hold of this n naught. Any ideas?
Sir, for
Yeah.
we can think of the fact that for every epsilon there must exist x minus xn, which is less than mod of x minus xn is less than epsilon, which can be less than delta.
Yeah, so the way to write this would be that since you are given that f is continuous, firstly given this epsilon, get hold of a delta such that whenever y and x are within delta, then fx, fy are less than epsilon. Okay. And then use that this sequence is converging. Then for this delta, there will exist a n naught such that n bigger than equal to n naught will tell you that xn minus x is less than delta. And therefore, you will get that fxn minus fy will be fxn minus fx will be less than epsilon. What you said is correct. But the way to write it would be this. Given an epsilon, first use the continuity of f to get hold of a delta. X is fixed anyway. Fix x. Get given epsilon, get delta for the definition of continuity of the function at fx. And now come here and complete that since xn is going to x, you can get a n naught such that n bigger than equal to n naught will give you that xn and x differ by less than delta. And then it will follow that un and u are differing by less than epsilon. That's it. Yeah, so this question was that this condition so this is valid for all sequences xn, right? Yes. So see, we don't have to say for all or for some n, some in when we write a statement like this. What we have said that these three conditions, a sequence in E, sequence converging to X, X in E. These conditions imply fxn converges to fx. So it is understood that this means that this required that this is for all sequences xn converging to x, fxn goes to fx. Yes. But we don't need to say for all at all, because when you say A implies B, if A is true, B must be true. That means for all A, which for whatever things which are in A, everything must in B should be true. Okay. So when one says that a sequence in E converging to X, where X is also in E, implies this. And X is kept vague in both. There is no fixed X. So this is continuous for all points X in E. And this is for all X here. If you wanted to show that if you wanted to say that F is continuous at X, if and only if every sequence converging to X with Xn in E, this will hold. Yeah, the time is up. Those who want to leave for a class, if you have a class, you can go. I can be around for some more time to answer questions, if any. And we have not completed the proof. I have only showed that continuity implies the sequence condition. You have to argue that if this sequential convergence holds, then the function must be continuous. I will either write this whole thing, including the part done just now, carefully and send it to you, or we will do it on Friday. We'll see. So they have only defined continuity and brought its connection with sequences. And it depends on different individuals. You want to prove something about continuity of a function. If you are more comfortable proving sequence, you first prove the relevant thing for sequence and then you say, but that is same as continuity. There are people who like continuity of functions much more than continuity of sequences, and they'll say that, okay, I'll prove continuity of the function and from there deduce that this sequence is converging. Either way.
Sir, I had a small doubt.
Sure.
Sir, if you consider the function f of x equal to x, where the domain is open interval 1, 2, union open interval 2, 3. So
open interval 2, 3.
2, 3. So this will be continuous, right? Because
equal to x, yeah.
This will be continuous, right?
This will be continuous. This will be continuous.
Okay.
This is also continuous. One formula defines it for x in 1 to 2 and another formula defines it for x in 2 to 3. And this is still continuous.
Yeah, just it is similar to that example you gave before.
Yeah. And the difference in the two is that you cannot add the point 2 to it and define f of 2 in whatever way, because f of 2 as of now has not been defined. Okay. So in general, you had a E, you get a set E dash which contains E. So f is from E to R. The question can be, can we extend f to E dash? That means everything in E, it is already defined. The new points, you define it in suitable way such that something happens. So this example, when I have changed the value, I cannot extend it to a set E dash which includes 2 in such a way that the extended function is still continuous. Whereas if you had the same formula fx equal to x for both, you can extend it so that it remains continuous. Okay.
So yeah.
Sir, even if the different formulae have the same value at 2, then also we can extend it.
Then you can extend it. You are right. But that was the condition. That was the example I was going to write.
Okay.
This you can extend because at 2 both have the same value. So this is another very interesting area of work, that when can you extend a given function to a slightly larger domain satisfying some more properties. Okay. So extension of a continuous function is itself a very interesting question. Sometimes you can do it, sometimes you cannot do it. Now you start writing conditions when you can do it and when you cannot do it, and so on and so forth. Okay. But for all that things, basically you must completely digest what do we mean by continuity of a given function. That's all. Okay. So epsilon is given, then delta is chosen. Can we choose delta first and then allow for all epsilon? None of that. No. It has to be in the way we have defined. There are equivalent ways of doing it. We already saw one that we can always talk in terms of subsequences. I have to write the proof and send you, but or do it next class. But this completely avoids our epsilon delta calculated discussion. Limit existence of f at point n naught. No.
No, sir. Just the thing for continuity of f is the definition is quite similar to the definition of limit exists at a point of f. Like,
yeah, at a point. Yes.
It's quite similar, right?
Wait, but in a sequence, we have no limit at a point. We have sequence, it is xn and x, that's it. Xn converging to x. There is no at a point. So I don't understand your question.
Maybe for limit of a function at a point.
Yeah, limit of a function.
No. I don't know what you mean, but you can talk about a sequence of functions, and that convergence of sequence of functions at a point is one thing, but so here we can be talking about convergence at x. Our sequence of functions themselves these are sequence of functions, and now we are talking about convergence at x. I don't know if this is what you had in mind, but
Sir, I had a question.
Sure.
Maybe this is something we'll talk about later in the course, but so is there a visual way to tell if a function is uniformly convergent, or
Wait. Uniform convergence, we will take it up, and only then I will answer that. Okay.
Okay, sir. Sure.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Because there are too many things changing. So visual. See, the other problem with visual is somebody may say, yeah, it is visually decisive, and somebody else will say, no, it is not decisive for me. So visual always has this problem.
Okay. Yeah. Right. I sort of meant, is there some visual or intuition, some sort of intuition which mostly works, at least, if not all the time?
Yeah.
But yeah.
There is. We will take it up when we consider uniform convergence, etc. We will convert. So, I mean, the thing to do remains. I mean, things immediately that we are going to do with continuity of a function is that when the function is defined on a closed interval, then continuity is same as uniform continuity. That means you can actually choose delta without involving x.
Okay.
So that continuous function on a closed bounded interval is also uniformly continuous. So that is one important result. And then we are going to take about sequence of functions and talk about limit of that.
Okay.
So these are the next two things to do. After that, of course, there is lots of things to do. We have differentiation will come after that and so on. But as far as continuity of a function is concerned, these are the two things I need to discuss. Closed bounded interval, continuity implies uniform continuity, and then convergence of a sequence of functions.
Okay, sir. Got it, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right then. Bye. Good day.
Sir, will we be formally doing the sequential criterion of limit and those things? I mean, for the extension of sequence to function in case of limit. I mean, we have directly concluded about continuity, right? Without actually going into limit of functions.
Yeah.
So will that part be formally done?
No, I don't know what part you are talking about. So you send me writing what you want to say, but
So I mean, I was just saying about the limit of a function. I mean, from sequence.
so where is the sequence coming in? I mean, that is a more complicated question. Limit of a function, there is no sequence involved. Right?
Okay, okay.
So what is that formal part that are we going to do or not? I don't understand.
I mean, we have talked about the convergence of a sequence, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then the I mean the limit of a sequence, but the limit of a function we haven't talked about yet.
Limit of a function. Why do we need to talk about limit of a function? Function is continuous or not is the point.
Sir, I think he might be meaning things of the form. Suppose f of x is equal to x, then as x tends to 1, f of x tends to 1, like something like that.
Well,
like as x tends to a point, what does the function tend to?
Yeah, but I mean, unless a question is given, it is very difficult to answer because we are talking, the continuity of the function has to be defined already, right?
So I mean, a function may be continuous at a point, but its limit may not exist, right?
No, we are not going to be talking about any such thing. Okay.
Okay, okay, sir.
Because how can it be continuous if the limit is not defined at that point? Can you tell me what is an example in your mind that will alert me what is it that you are thinking about?
Sir, maybe I can mail you regarding this.
Yeah, please. All right then. Bye.